This video is going to be different from the other Sweet Baby Inc. videos you may have seen up to this point. Most of them go over the facts of Sweet Baby, listing the games they've infected, and maybe adding some of the more common digs at the company, calling them bad or woke. This video will be more esoteric and philosophical in nature, because I fear too many people only view this on its surface, which is that some no-talented idiots are making video games suck, but the roots and depths of its evil, and I use that word in its truest nature, go beyond. For those who don't even know what Sweet Baby is, I recommend looking at some other videos to get yourself brushed up on it. But this video might also be a good video to start out with, as it will eventually flow into what Sweet Baby is, after I lay down certain foundations. Because of the philosophical nature of this, there isn't much I can do with video, so enjoy some Elden Ring gameplay in the background as I talk. I have a tendency to start in obscure, seemingly unrelated spots when making these kinds of videos. In my video about why modern stories suck, I started at the point of the birth of Japanese karate. This video is going to take it to a new level, as I set my starting point at the birth of human civilization. There's several aspects of past civilizations that blow my mind whenever I sit down and think about it. With no comforts of modern tools or how-to videos, people all over the planet looked at a giant wild animal like a horse and said, I'm gonna jump on its back and tame it. Giant behemoths like ox made people go, I'm gonna put a metal ring inside its nose and make it do labor for me. I'm oversimplifying to be sure, but the stuff people of old were able to accomplish with the limited tools they had was astounding. What I would call the main driving factor in all societies, all cultures, regardless of the point in history, the one thing more important than our physical strength, our adaptability, or even our intelligence, is the human spirit. That feeling of inspiration that rises from within us that goes beyond intellect. That feeling of, even when logically you see nothing that can be done, you decide to push through because something inside you is saying there is a path, even if you can't see it. And what feeds that human spirit, our very souls, is not our logic. Partially, maybe, but there is a far more important factor that falls into all of this. A culture's religion, their customs, their stories, their art, all of these things serve that purpose. The universe can be quite a confusing place. It's a damn miracle that people were able to slowly figure out the rules and laws to the metaphysics of it all. With no real guidance, we figured out that one man and one woman are the best ways going forward in raising a family, as opposed to one man and however many women he can get his hands on, as an example. Telling a child, don't be jealous of your siblings will go in one ear and out the other. Telling him the story of Cain and Abel will captivate them at first, and eventually bore into them the consequences of such jealousies, and many, many other lessons. Even if I'm not a Christian, one of my favorite talks I listened to last year was Jordan Peterson's series on Exodus, because he and the others did a fantastic job diving into the metaphysical story behind Moses and tyranny, and we're not wasting time wondering if the 40 years in the desert was literal or not. Non-religious stories, like King Arthur, also serve as a way to inspire the young. Historical figures are given a whole mythos surrounding them as well. One particular historical figure I've known to admire is Guan Yu, China's god of war. Men such as Alexander the Great inspired awe with how much they were able to accomplish when they were younger, and tales of ancestors are told to children around the globe. Children are easily impressionable. How often, when you were in the single-digit ages, did you maybe watch a sport on TV, then go off and play that sport outside? I know Michael Jordan's put on many people's love of basketball, myself included. Or how many see some kind of action TV show and it made you want to act out what you were seeing? Kids imitate. It's something that they do. It's hardwired into them. There's a good reason why so many heroes of the past were actually heroes and not just some depressed, shut-in man-child who never leaves the cave. Flaws were given to these characters to introduce the idea that they can excel despite their flaws. Kids were told stories about not flying too close to the sun, not to keep them from literally being too close to the sun, but from getting in over their heads, getting put in a position well above what they could handle, having the burdens of success not crush them before they are ready. I'll also point out there's a whole other part to the tale of Icarus that is, not coincidentally in my opinion, always left out, and that is he was also told not to fly too low to the earth. The stories never stopped just as children, and they served as a way to teach and mold the people of the land. They were a way to motivate and drive the individual, and the society as a whole, and there certainly is power in sharing a united story among everyone. The same lesson applies to the physical arts as well. People who, in between the chaos and frustrations of ancient or medieval life, were still able to produce amazing works of art. One of my favorite forms of art that I seldom talk about are sculptures, especially ones that have the look and imitation of silk wrapped around a person's body. I'll slap a picture on screen for a bit so people can see what I'm talking about. These forms of art, being created from a slab of rock with nothing more than the person's hands and intuition, always always leaves me with a certain feeling deep inside. And it's not just the image at its face value that we see, and that is an important component of it, but it's also the physical hard work that went into it. If you were to make a similar sculpture on a computer program and 3D print it, it would hold zero value for me. There's no story behind this art. It lacks that certain magic behind it. This is also why aesthetics has played a vital role in all of human history. Anyone else find it perplexing and amusing in the worst way that, in the olden ages where stability and certainty were considerably lower, and the risks were considerably higher, that civilizations and cultures were able to create with aesthetics and feel in mind. Whereas with today, with so much more technology, money, certainty, our creations end up being ugly, bland, cookie-cutter structures. It's undoubtedly one of the many factors in play for so many people's pessimistic depressions in life. We recognize this idea of aesthetics in video games as well. The game I'm playing right now, Elden Ring, is a Souls game, born from its original games known as Demon Souls and Dark Souls. In these games, there is a certain term called Fashion Souls. What this essentially is players talking about the importance of aesthetics. In this game where your stats are vital to your combat ability, a whole ecosystem exists where people say it's more important to look cool while taking down a boss. The character you see on screen goes deep into that. Out of all the various factions in the game, I have chosen to represent the dragons. My armor set is based around the dragons, my main weapon is based around dragons, and if that dragon weapon is bad in a fight, I can switch to the Dragon Greatclaw or Dragon Halberd and use those weapons instead, depending on the situation. I wield these massive two-handed weapons in a single hand, as in the other hand I have what's known as a Dragon Communion Seal, which allows me to summon ethereal dragons or dragon lightning to take people out. Is it the most optimal, highest damage build one can make in this game? No, far from it. But the aesthetics is what matters more, because now I can say it wasn't a number crunching calculation that took down a boss, it was a representative of the dragons that I created that took down the boss. In short, the rule of cool. These kinds of things matter. They've always mattered. It is part of the idea of it's the journey, not the destination. Yes, there is a point where aesthetics do more harm than good if you remove too much of the function, but there's always a case of things going too far or turning out bad, no matter what you're talking about. In terms of video games and storytelling, we still have barely grasped the potential of what this new medium can do. A story around a campfire will flare up one's imagination as you create the images in your head, but video games lets you move those images and interact with them, and make them interact with everything else. In my younger days, I used to use video games as a mode of inspiration to get me to work out harder. I saw its potential. Imagining me wielding a massive sword was one thing, but controlling a character who wields that massive sword ignited my inspiration in a whole other way. Seeing the massive sword swing, hearing the ever-satisfying thud, watching the particles fly all over, and seeing it take down the dragon or lich or whatever else. These are the modern day ways of telling the stories that drove people to move forward in the past. The characters of these stories, the archetypes that we would see, they were always either larger-than-life beings that we inspired to be for periods in our lives, making us go past what we would normally do or think we were capable of, or the average everyday man who is given a higher calling, and he must head out into the unknown to discover the strength within himself. These metaphysical, psychological building blocks of our psyche are one of the most important aspects of humankind, and you would have to be quite an evil person to decide to wreck those building blocks for your own amusement. Video games have been in a very bad position for a long time now. The most critically acclaimed games of the past few years, and the biggest failures, simultaneously paint the same picture for us. AAA games have become more visually high-tech than anything else in the past, yet at the same time have become aesthetically displeasing, even downright disgusting. Masterpieces such as Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate have shown us the potentials of what could be. Games such as Lethal Company or Palworld have shown us that you don't need a massive budget, and even low-tier graphics can still hold high-tier aesthetics attached to these games. Even if the levels of quality and polish can be worlds apart, such as Baldur's Gate vs Palworld, every gamer who's played them can say they feel the love behind these games. On the other side of the aisle, games such as Mortal Kombat 1 or Suicide Squad have people talking about how they can feel the soulless corporate greed from these games. Suicide Squad is an apt example of this, coming from the same studio who made the critically acclaimed Batman Arkham games. They did an almost cliche trend at this point in video games. They took otherwise beautiful women and made them ugly. Really ugly. This uglification of women in video games is seen everywhere in the West, from the latest Spider-Man to Forspoken, the upcoming Fable. All the women in these games come out as objectively ugly. There were many people making side-by-side comparisons of Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad compared to the Arkham games over 10 years ago. And the models over a decade older were better looking and more aesthetically pleasing. Suicide Squad also did something atrocious to its larger-than-life heroes. We've been talking about heroes and icons and stories, and in the post-industrial age of humanity, comic book characters have become those icons for many people. We've seen how over the past decade or two, how these cultural icons have become bastardized and stripped of all that has made them great, and this game continued that trend. Whether it's giving an undignified bullet to the head of Batman, or quite literally pissing on the corpse of the Flash, the game insulted the heroes, the lore, and everything that many used as their icons. It's no wonder why so many people feel so depressed and hopeless these days. You can point to financial instability and inflation and all that stuff all you want, but this is not the first time humanity has been through this. I don't know, however, if there's ever been such a spiritual, psychological crisis that any group of people has faced like we are currently facing in the West. Our art is a joke. Our stories are jokes. It's why so many people are looking to the East for better stories. Not even good stories necessarily, just better than the slop we've been given. We have done away with larger-than-life heroes and instead have Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube influencers. And the only thing they truly influence is where our money goes. The stories that served as building blocks for each individual person and each culture. The stories that are meant to motivate and inspire us. The icons meant to make us reach for something more. The pieces of artwork meant to reach into the depths of our souls. The aesthetics of our culture. All of these things that make up the previously mentioned building blocks of our psyches and souls. They're being eroded away. And anytime anything comes out that seeks to be one of those things, its soul gets immediately sucked out of it. It's the sculpture example I mentioned before. The piece of work that someone creates with their own hands becomes enchanted with the kind of magic that you can only feel, that stirs something deep within your being, and a measly 3D printed imitation lacks that magic. The aesthetics and feeling that something gives you no longer matters to the people who are controlling these symbols and icons. They are just, as people so often put it, soulless cash grabs. So what does Suicide Squad have in common with, say, Mortal Kombat 1, or Alan Wake 2, or Batman Arkham Knights, or the upcoming Fable? There's the through line on the surface. Ugly women, bad boring gameplay, poorly written characters that feel nothing like what they should be, and the modern audience's level of plot. One layer beneath it all, however, is the company Sweet Baby Inc. I'm gonna keep this short and simple. Sweet Baby Inc. is a company that these other video game companies hire to write the stories and characters for them. Sweet Baby is a company that cares not for the deeper themes. They do not think about the timeless messages of why Aesop's fables have withstood the test of time, or Lord of the Rings still echoes through every piece of fiction we see today. The archetypes of various characters, from the hero to the magician, that seem to exist beyond even our comprehension of them. All these things are mere afterthoughts to Sweet Baby. No, every single thing needs to find its way back to modern day, for modern audiences, for the shallow, surface-level cultural concepts they wish to either push or destroy. I'll use Elden Ring again as an example of concepts and archetypes of a story that are timeless and don't have to tie into some modern-day politician or ideology. If you don't know the plot to the game, don't worry, I'll keep this simple. There's a character in the game, General Radahn, who is a demigod of immense power. His heroic trait was one of unyielding loyalty to the first Elden Lord, basically king of his nation, Godfrey. He idolized him so much that even his armor was made as a way to honor him. But, like every other hero that you face in this game, his heroic traits became twisted, and after Godfrey went away and the entirety of the land was in upheaval, his loyalty turned into unchanging stagnation. The man was so obsessed with not letting the flow of time go forward that he stopped the motion of the stars themselves in an attempt to keep things the way they are. The game did not try to tie Radahn to some modern-day polarizing figure. His soldiers were not some poorly disguised allegory for MAGA supporters. King Godfrey did not have a line where he says we must make the lands between great again, to oh so subtly tell people who the writers want you to think of. No, the story and characters stand as themselves, not requiring a modern day backdrop to be relatable. The game was not trying to say that the heroic trait of loyalty was bad, only that it could become twisted. A lesson that matters in any culture at any point in time. But Sweet Baby does not care about any of that. They will have characters speak in modern day lingo, They will act as poor parodies of themselves, and they will try to push a message that the worshippers of the current year will gravitate towards. The reason why they have the power to do these things, make these massive changes, is a very simple one. The soulless corporations just want more money. That's it. The soul of the product or the people who get the product doesn't matter. Right now, the companies who control the investment money, like BlackRock, want exactly what Sweet Baby is doing to be the norm. There's obviously more details, names to be named, etc., but that goes beyond the scope of this video. Many others have made videos going into detail of BlackRock or Sweet Baby, and I highly recommend you seek those kinds of videos out. Sweet Baby is not the linchpin of the uprooting of society. They are but one cog in a much larger machine. However, breaking cogs is a good way to make a machine stop running, or at least slow it down. So what are the depths to what Sweet Baby is intending to do with all of this? Why destroy all of these established characters? Why ruin so many stories? On the surface, again, it's pretty simple, frighteningly so even. They are mere henchmen, not even aware of what they are doing, but it makes them feel good and virtuous. Virtue signaling and woke, as the people say. To be honest, I don't want to dive too deeply into this on this video, because it is a can of worms that needs a video all on its own. What I want to do right now, however, is turn this script on its head a little bit. To the people who have followed along so far, and have agreed with the bashing of Sweet Baby, I'm gonna need to say some things you're not going to like. And despite the tone of my voice and the words I use, just know it does come from a place of love. Purely for the purposes of modern day political nomenclatures, I'm going to paint everyone with a broad brushstroke of the political terms the left and the right. The left will be the woke crowd, the right will be everyone else, from the counterculture warriors to the normies. Yes, there is more nuance, this is just for simplicity's sake. For many years now, the right has complained about the left's subversion of culture, their infiltration of arts, movies, comics, video games, and everything else. I just wanted to play video games, as the meme goes. The Sweet Baby people, if you follow the rabbit hole, leads all the way back to Gamergate, in fact. It's why this event is called Gamergate 2.0. But why is it back? Well, first of all, it never actually left, so it's not back, it's always been here. Why are these people so successful at infiltration? Why have they managed to infect all of our stories and cultures? Well, the answer lies in the meme I've just said. I just wanted to play video games. They didn't infiltrate, they took open vacancies. The right, as a whole, barely has a creative bone in its body anymore. Yes, I'm sure that in the broad brushstrokes of tens, if not hundreds of millions of people, you might find enough examples on the contrary. So many that you might need more than one hand to count them if you're lucky. But those token examples that everyone's going to use does not take away from the whole of the culture. Hell, you have figures and thought leaders in the Daily Wire who on the regular shit all over anime and video games, and have so for years. There are constant memes about how the left are consumers. Don't question, just consume product and get excited for next product. I'm sorry to say, people on the right, but that's you. You are the ones who just want to play video games, not create them, or even so much as think deeper about them. You are the ones who want nothing more than to go back to a time in which you don't have to think about anything, and you can just mindlessly consume. The reason why the left has become so prevalent in music is so few of you on the right can play any instruments. The reason they're all over the comic book industry is because so many decide to just consume and not create. And to be frank, looking at the heads of Comicsgate, the pushback is embarrassing, to say the least. And the reason that all over video games is, well, see above. And even now, with the counterculture revolution that's been going on the right, all I am seeing from the right is mere reactions to the left. They lead you around by the nose. They make the stories, you react to them. All you are doing is trying to be the opposite of them, regardless of what the opposite is. Your stories are not stories meant to stand the test of time. Your stories are meant to own the libs. Some of the biggest pushbacks in music are just that, pushing back against instead of standing on their own 2 feet. Going back to the prime video game examples of Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate, there's no political sides to be found on either side of the aisle. What's fucking embarrassing, however, is how many people on the right refused to play Baldur's Gate because there were things in the game they decided were a product of the left and must therefore stand against it. Let's just say, for a moment, you take away the whole of the left. No more culture war, no more ramming heads against the other side. You've achieved your victory, you've achieved your peace. How many people on the right would be able to make any form of art, make any kind of music, make any kind of culture? How many will just go back to mindless consumption? how many YouTube channels would cease to exist because the content creators, and boy is that a bullshit term to describe these people, how many clickbait rage merchants would be unable to maintain the channels because without an enemy to fight, without being an outlet for people's 2 minutes of hate, they will be unable to create anything else. They will be unable to talk about something good just on the basis of it being good and not as something to own the libs. If Ben Shapiro cannot make his movies making fun of men and women's sports to quote unquote push back against the culture, would he be able to create any movie that anyone would want to watch? And for some viewers right now, the uncomfortable question, if your actions were no longer dictated by the culture war without the guiding force of owning the libs, do you even know what your likes and dislikes would be anymore? I'm not heaping praise on the left's ideas. In fact, if I said what I really think should be done about the left, I'd probably get a visit from the FBI. But one thing is for sure, they are devoted. They are true believers in the deranged cults. And they are willing to create and sacrifice for their cause, whether the cause is all-encompassing or a small portion of the enveloping evil they have lashed onto. They, ironically enough, in the destruction of our stories, are moved by their own stories that they have been told. This is not to say that the whole of pushing back is to be discarded. It is an important piece of putting things back on the right path, but it's only a minor part. And if you cannot create outside of pushing back, then listen very carefully to these words. Any and everything you do, every single ounce of effort you put in will be fruitless. Personally, I wish to be able to repair and replace those aforementioned building blocks of culture and society, of the psyches of individuals and society alike, with stories and art. Only problem is, I cannot find the groups of people not on the left who know how to. Only people who want to use the building blocks after the fact. My message to the right, or more accurately, those who would oppose people like Sweet Baby, or Hollywood, or the entire corrupted field of the arts, is thus: move past mere consumption. Start creating, and not creating on the basis of merely pushing back. Create on the basis of simply creating something great that will stand on its own. Then, make sure the gates to what you create are kept nice and shut, and you do not allow the sweet baby poison to spread to what you have created. For myself, I've got multiple stories I've been creating in the background, hampered by time and energy more than anything else. My business, The Dragon's Treasure, does not exist as a business meant to fight someone else. Though I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope my store would cause certain other businesses to crumble. I suppose that's my promotional pitch. I sell and create anime-themed teas for the purposes of having other people learn the joys of tea, and no other purpose dedicated to fighting an enemy. This channel was not created to push back against something. I am but one humble seed that hopes to grow with the idea of what I have laid out in mind. If you wish to support that idea, here's your first means. Check out my website in the description below, subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment. I've been considering diving deeper into the philosophical side of things for a while. It's not like I haven't done it before. One of my most popular videos is the philosophy of Gurren Lagann. I want to know what people think of this video. I actually read the comments, even if I can't reply to them all. And maybe, if this proves to be successful enough, I can look into making more videos of this nature.